Today we are so excited to start our fall installment of VQMS, and thanks everybody for joining. Thanks our panelists for taking the time to join. Today's a special one because we're here to honor Andrey, who is a founding member of VQMS and has contributed so much over the years to the community. So today we're going to have Andrey give our very first talk in the fall series, and the floor is yours. Oh, as a reminder, we're going to ask all the panelists to jump in as they have questions throughout the talk, and then for attendees, you can put your questions in the Q&A, and then we'll ask the questions on your behalf to Andrey during. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Janlin, and thanks everyone for both joining as a panelist and for joining us in the audience. It's been a lot of fun to organize this for the last several years, and this is kind of, I'm glad to give a talk after stopping doing it, and it's great to see that the series is going very strong and with a lot of people in the room. So today I'll present something which will be very helpful for me and for my courses to get feedback on. This is work related to ad loads on social media. This is a project which we've been working for the last 1.5 to 2 years, and we have our initial results. We're pretty close to wrapping up the paper, and I'll not show you everything today which we were hoping to get to. We'll not see some counterfactual results, but we're in a very good place to get feedback, and we're close to wrapping up this. So this is any feedback, any question will be super helpful. This is joint work with Rafa Jimenez Duran, who is also on the call, and he's here to help partly with Q&A, partly with any additional questions which might come up. And he's at Bocconi. He's now visited in Stanford. For those of you who are in the Bay Area, he is around. And with George Beknazar-Yuzbashev, who just moved from Columbia to Chicago, and Mateusz Staliński, who is at Warwick. So let me start with a quick example, a bit from the history of social media. So this is a website that many people on the call might not know about so well. It's called 6degrees.com. And the reason I bring it up is that it's one of the earlier examples, or early examples of social media out there. This website was started in '97. Looked very different from how we think about social media today, but it does have some very familiar features to us today as well. You could register a profile, you could message your friends. Oh, good. I should be careful with that. Message your friends, post stuff on your wall or whatever it was called back then. And the idea basically was to create a social media business. The website was successful for several years. It was sold, I think, 2 or 3 years later for $100-something million. But what I wanted to highlight on this slide, that from beginning, the way they were trying to monetize even almost 30 years ago is through advertisements. So you see on top of the screen, there is kind of the plugin, which was display ads at the time, is how they were trying to make money. And so this idea that social media websites originally in the business model and up until now, there was a bit of changes now, were primarily trying to fund themselves through advertisement is what we'll focus on in this paper. And the question is, why is that the right business model for social media? Where we start in this paper is coming from several hypotheses. One is, so the platform is charging advertisers, is charging users in ads and not in money, which suggests that users might be more inelastic with respect to ads loads and ad volume versus with respect to the subscriptions and the prices on social media. The second one is that targeting advertisement, which wasn't that big thing 30 years ago, but is a very big thing now, that might be valuable for user engagement. So that also helps the platform to make money off advertisement. It's also valuable potentially for advertisers, but in this talk we'll focus more on the users and less on the on advertisers. And third, that platform can also price discriminate, like you would discriminate with like regular prices, but with ad loads, both in terms of personalizing ad loads to different people and choosing different degrees of micro targeting of ads. And here ad load price discrimination can be less salient and so less controversial for people than regular price discrimination. I was saying that this is a traditionally like ad-funded model of social media. Recently, there was some changes to that, and particular like example I wanted to highlight is some regulatory pressure for platforms in Europe. Facebook a couple of years ago was required in Europe to give a choice screen between ad-funded model versus subscription model. So this is a example of a screenshot that people saw in Europe in one of the countries. And I think around a year ago, there was a second push to give a choice to people of ads which are personalized or ads which are not personalized, basically targeting some of the pillars of this business model of social media I was talking just now here. So this is the motivation of the paper, is to understand the business model of social media and trade-off between ads and regular prices and how these changes really affect social media business model. So this gets us to what we do in this paper. We'll measure the effect of changing both the quantity of ad loads, so how many of them are on the platform, and the quality, so the degree of micro-targeting or ability of platforms to target ads to consumers on user engagement on the platform. Two things which are still ongoing, and I'll talk a bit about where we're trying to get with this and what's the framework, is to understand what is the optimal ad load behavior of platforms and how close the platform is to that behavior, and to simulate different policy counterfactuals, including the choice screen, including some like changes in ability to target. The way we'll get to it is that we'll run a field experiment on Facebook. There is a part of the paper which will be descriptive about different social media, and then experiment itself will target Facebook. I'll talk about this in the next section a bit more. We'll ask users to install a browser extension, which will manipulate which and how many ads they see. And we'll use this to measure the effect of ad loads on consumers, and then we'll use those estimates to get to counterfactuals. Before I get to the substance, like to more substance of the talk, let me give you a quick overview of where it fits in the literature. It studies ad loads on platforms, so you can imagine in marketing there is a lot of literature. It really connects well. Couple of things I wanted to highlight. So the model we'll use is in the style of Anderson and Coate, the optimal choice of ad loads on two-sided platforms. Ken Wilbur's work is the earliest empirical work trying to take it to data. So what our model will be in this style. There is papers measuring ad load elasticities on social media. Guy Aridor's job market paper, good example. The closest paper to what we are doing, which will benchmark our result, is paper by Niels on long-term effects of ads on Facebook on engagement. There is work on other platforms, including by people in the room, like Ali has great paper and a follow-up paper on Pandora related to ad loads. So what we contribute to this work is evidence of price discrimination by different social media. So descriptives, which we thought are missing a bit from the literature. Our experiment will vary the quality of ads. And so that's a different dimension of how what platforms do might change. And we'll try to explain why ads are so prevalent given the estimates. We also fit into the work of economics of privacy, which again, in economics and marketing, people contributed quite a lot. Both fields contribute a lot. The literature shows how limited tracking affects platform revenues. In our case, we can think about targeting as being enabled by data and by being able to track. This paper will focus more on effects on user engagement and less effects on advertiser side. But it's in this way it fits well into the privacy literature and into including thinking about privacy as functional or intrinsic preference or instrumental preference. And I'll get to this in a second. So in the rest of the talk, I'll talk about experimental design just to get us on the same page. What is the data we're working with? I'll give a very quick 3-slide overview of the model we have in mind to test for optimal ad loads. I'll show you results both in terms of descriptives and in terms of the experimental evidence and the treatments. I'll give you an overview of counterfactuals, what we're trying to get to, and then I'll conclude and maybe we can discuss the paper and I'll solicit some feedback. Before I move on, let me stop for a second and see if there are any questions about the setup and the question, what we're trying to do in the paper.
There was a question from Eric Bratlow that Raphael answered already in the chat. It's more about whether you allow for people may like ads to a degree, so it's not necessarily a trade-off?
So does that model allow? Yes, yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And yeah, we'll get to that. So like, if I understand the question correctly, people might like targeted ads, and we'll try to measure this. People might also not like targeted ads. In a sense, maybe I like ads themselves, but I just hate that I'm targeted. I have this intrinsic preference that my data shouldn't be used as much by the platform, and our experiment allows us to get at the both kind of in both directions. So that will be part of the result. Thanks. All right, so then let me jump into the experimental design and results. And then again, I'll stop after this section, but please feel free to jump in at any point if there is any questions which come up. This paper uses a browser extension experiment. Extensions are pretty common in the digital ecosystem. Typical extensions you'll have on your computer will be ad blockers, not the one which we'll use, because typically ad blockers wouldn't block native ads or social media ads. They'll block display ads or video ads, and things like Grammarly and like different services which are add-ons on your browser. These extensions also have started to be more and more used by research in economics and marketing. There is like a quickly growing line of papers here. George, Rafa, and Mateusz have a previous work related to social media toxicity, which uses a similar extension, similar idea, which what we'll use today. It's differently built, but same idea. If you followed the work by Andrey and Chiara, you know the web monitoring extension. So it's very similar functional, kind of similar idea to us. In our case, we build extension from scratch using a third-party company. The advantage is we get to see and control everything users see, but then the downside, we cannot do much on mobile. So in everything I'll show you today about Facebook and about other social media, we'll be talking about display usage, browsing, everything on display. So when we recruit our sample, we'll try to oversample people from display. Keep it in mind whenever I show you results. In terms of the design and the timeline, we ran the experiment in the second part of 2024. We recruited people through Facebook ads. We didn't tell them the study will be about ads, but we told them that the study will be about social media platform and their business model. The fact we recruit people through ads on Facebook is common in the literature, but again, keep it in mind for our sample, people who will be part of the study were people who at least noticed ads and click on them on Facebook. So these are people more active and more engaged with ads than your median user. People will land on the study website. They'll get an onboarding question with consent, some demographics measurement, and a measure of how much they're willing to accept to uninstall Facebook for 4 weeks. So this is a measure of willingness to pay we'll use later. Then they go into 12 weeks of tracking before the end line. For 6 weeks, they install the extension and we don't do anything. We just track their browsing behavior. For another 6 weeks, we run an intervention on Facebook where we change potentially their ad loads. I'll talk about this in a bit. Then we do the end line survey where we ask people, again, questions about the experience, about their news consumption, and the question again, how much you're willing to accept to uninstall Facebook for 4 weeks. We incentivize this question by saying, if you're the person given the lowest willingness to accept, you'll be chosen and we'll give you this money to uninstall, and you'll be paid the second lowest willingness to accept. So the idea is a second price auction type of incentive in this question. Now, finally, that's why we formally end the study, but we do keep the intervention running till midsummer of 2025. Some people, there'll be some attrition, I'll show it to you later, but people in general will do end line, and a lot of them will just keep using the extension. And so our main treatment estimates will be the 6 weeks benchmark, 6 weeks intervention. And here we'll be able to go for extra several months and see what happens to these users in different treatment conditions. So I'll call this a long-term effect. It's not 3 months, is not a very long-term effect, but this is kind of the best we can do with this design while still having a sufficient sample size. Our sample will have around 2,000 people. We always sample on female, Democrat, white, lower income respondents, so somewhat similar to other studies in the space. We'll also sample on people who are more active on Facebook, just because people had to be there and had to click and had to go through that. Now, this takes us to the different treatment arms we'll send people to. There is 2 treatment arms and 2 different control arms, which is a bit unusual. So let me unpack why we are doing it this way. One treatment arm will be to hide ads. In this case, we still allow Facebook to serve ads to people, but then for people who are randomized in this group, we remove any ads from their social media feed on Facebook, unless they were shown right away on the screen which they open. So if it's in the first 2 slots on the page, then we don't remove the ad. If anything was loaded below, we'll remove the ad and we'll just push all other content above. I'll show you an example in a second of how it works. We don't remove the initial ads to minimize some, like in hundreds of milliseconds, there'll be some changes on the screen for people. We don't want them to have this weird experience, so we keep any ads which are right on top. The control for this condition will be pure control, where we just don't do anything. People just use Facebook, ads are still there. A different treatment arm will be replace ads. This is where we take Facebook loads your ads, but we don't show you your own ads. We take a random draw of ads of people who were in our sample in the last ads that people in our sample saw in the last, let's say, 24, 36 hours. It's kind of a bit of a movie window to make sure we have enough ads. And then we show random ad to the person instead of the targeting ad. So this takes the current perfectly targeted regime of Facebook to something like other extreme, no targeting at all, without changing the advertiser behavior. Without targeting might be different. And the goal of doing it such extreme, we wanted to have at least to make sure we get some effect of this intervention. And I'll show you, even in this case, we get pretty small effects, which will be part of the result. But that's how to think about it. We go perfectly targeting to no targeting. And the control for this condition will be keep ads, where we take ads and we go through the same process of replacement, but we replace the ad with itself. Why are we doing it? Because when we replace the ad, people will not be able to comment, people will not be able to share. I'll show you screenshots on the next couple of slides, but it looks just slightly different. And we wanted to roll out some novelty effects. It's because of replacement and not because it's randomized affecting user engagement. So this is our 4 conditions. I'll highlight quickly. Notice that replace is oversampled a bit in terms of the number of people. As we were doing this extension, we ran into a couple of small glitches of the extension. Initially, it was on our side for a couple of small cohorts. Initially, we showed not a random ad, but the same ad. Later on, because we ran this recruitment for several months, Facebook changed some features. So for some people, for several days, we just had a title show slightly differently. So one thing I learned from this entire experience, that running extension experiments is super difficult because there is so many things changing even on one platform. As the second, because we lost some people in the replace, we've oversampled this. When I run the results, I will reweight people correctly to compare apples to apples in terms of cohorts. And all results I'll show you today, and I'll get to economic specification, they'll be robust to just drop in these observations which were affected or keeping them and controlling for them. But I wanted to flag that it's part of trying to do these experiments. All right. Examples of the ads. So in the hide condition, this is a person in control condition. They see organic post and ad. This is the person in the hide condition. They don't see this ad, and all their other content is pushed up. This is how replacement condition looks when ad is replaced with itself. You see it's almost identical ad, but you cannot comment on the replace ad. This is original, this is control, this is, I guess I should say differently. This is a keep condition, so this is ad replaced with itself. This is a regular ad, and this is how we replace it. Looks the same, but comments are disabled, and people cannot share the ad. They can still like. And so finally, and I'll stop again for questions and for a discussion. So this is designed. So what does it mean outcomes for us in this experiment? First, we really care about platform engagement. So we'll track how much people spend time on Facebook, how much content they consume on Facebook, how much time they spend on other websites and other platforms. that we can track through their browser behavior. We care about ad engagement, so the pre-registered measure is the index of impressions and clicks. We take measures of impressions and clicks, we normalize them to standard deviation of 1, mean 0. We take the average. I'll show you the index, I'll show you separately impressions and clicks, and we'll discuss the results. And then we have a couple of other measures which we care about. One is, it was interesting to see for us how Facebook reacts to our experiment. Because notice from Facebook side, everything works as normal. Like they serve ads, we remove ads in the hide. And because of that, people don't click on the ads, but Facebook doesn't know we removed it. They just see that people stopped interacting with the ads. So one worry of us going in was that there'll be some supply side adjustments where Facebook will figure it out, and our treatment will be affected by also them showing fewer ads or re-optimizing. We didn't find much evidence of this. I'll show you on one of the results in a bit. And the second thing we care about is platform valuation or willingness to accept to deactivate. I'll show you today some average effects for treatment controls, but this is what we'll use later on in counterfactuals when we try to get to alternative models where we give prices to people. Again, let me stop for a second and see if there are any other questions and discussions related to the design before I go to the model.
Yeah, so another thing you can look at is the retention, right, over time in those different treatment arms, and how well do those correlate to the willingness to accept measures?
Retention as a, I thought initially you mean retention by treatment arms, and I'll show you a picture with those. So those I'll show you. That like that, do we see differential attrition by different treatment arms? The answer is no.
No?
The answer is no. So yeah, we don't, which is an outcome of itself. Like but you also said something about related to willingness to accept.
So yeah, I mean, if people are willing to accept differently for the different treatment arms, the attrition is itself a behavioral measure of that, right?
Yeah, yeah, I see. Yeah, I think that's a good point. So I think we preview of the results similar to Niels's paper, even though our statistical power and willingness to accept comparisons is much smaller. We have a smaller sample size. We don't see differences in willingness to accept across different treatments and control. We don't see differential attrition by treatment arms. And in some way, this is one of the takeaways from the results will be that people don't care that much about ad loads on social media as we could think about, and both in terms of hiding and replacing. But yeah, I'll show you, that's a good point. I'll show you the results, I think, in the end of the results deck. So I'll have a picture with attrition. Thanks. Any other questions, or I'll move on to the model?
Yeah, it's clarification. This is only on Facebook, like homepage newsfeed, or also Instagram?
This is good question. This is only on Facebook desktop newsfeed. Yes. Yeah.
Andrey, you mentioned that you think of ad targeting as a measure of quality. So I'm kind of curious, if targeting is optimized on conversion or something related to what the advertiser cares about, then targeted ads can be more annoying or less annoying. But if Facebook, influences the targeting based on how much it influences user engagement on Facebook, that's a different story. So, curious how you think about that.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. We talked with Rafa yesterday about the right quality. We use quality, and you'll see quality in the model again. But it's a good point. So in the experiment side, when we talk about targeting, it will be whatever Facebook is doing now, compared to completely random. That's the interpretation of the treatment. In the model, it's a bit more tricky. So the way we set up the model, we think about and I'll show you this in the next slide. We think about utility consumers get from consuming ads being higher if they have better targeting. But that doesn't mean people might like Facebook more because there is more targeted ads. So ads and targeting, like in kind of micro-targeting, is complementary. There is more utility from consuming ads if they're well targeted. And we thought about this almost by construction. We didn't think about the point with conversion, like maybe I just optimize for conversions and I hate it, but I'm kind of shown something that gets me to buy. That's a good point. But then we will still allow in the model that if there is more targeting, I'm just more happy with Facebook. So that's kind of how we try to separate it out. But anyway, let's follow up. Maybe let's talk more about this if it makes sense after we finish, because it's an important point for us.
Andrey, could you maybe talk a little bit more about the sort of random ads counterfactual? A thing I'm thinking about is if all your users are from the US, for example, then what you're doing is shuffling ads within the US. And so if Facebook already gates on, you can't see ads from Japan, you're sort of not really seeing like a random sample of all ads. You're sort of seeing a random sample conditional on some observables. Do you have any thoughts on this, or sort of any other framings of sort of that counterfactual?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the sample is not entirely from the US. It's mostly from the US, but so I think the screening we take is people should have browser in English language, but we don't do screening that they must be from the US. I actually need to know the answer to like which percent is from the US, but it's predominantly US. We do completely randomize. You could think about a better regime is to do it like some kind of targeting method that Facebook would be using if they didn't have access to individual level data. So by geographical blocks, by interest, by something similar. So I think that's kind of partly where your question is kind of going, like, so how to think about what this non-targeting can be. And again, the reason we didn't do it, partly because we just didn't know how to do it properly without internal data, but partly just to increase statistical power to make sure it's as different in our sample as possible. You're right, we still are constrained by the sample of our users, and maybe these are very special people, so we don't see a universe of ads, but this is kind of the best we can do given the recruitment, given the data we have.
Yes, I agree. I think this is a great counterfactual, by the way. I think this really kind of highlights a sort of lot of discrepancy, and so thank you.
No, thanks. This is helpful. Any other questions? Or I'll go to the model. Okay, let me then quickly. So I wouldn't spend much time on the model because we wouldn't estimate the model, and we wouldn't like really use it for optimal pricing test. But I think it's still useful to get a framing of how we think about ad loads on social media, because the question is motivated by the choice of ad loads and what would happen in the counterfactual scenarios. So just three slides on this to make sure we're on the same page. On the consumer side, we'll think about users spending time, choosing how much time to spend on social media. Again, for us, think Facebook. Given the ad loads on social media, which proportion of content are ads? So think about ads being between 0 and 1. And given this match quality or like degree of targeting to your question, this can also be between 0 and 1. 0 random, 1 as well as possible. This will mean that time people spend watching ads will be capital A, just time on the platform times which are ads. And we'll think about this quality, as we discussed, as increasing the utility people get from consuming ads, getting capital A, if the quality is higher. So this is cross-partial of utility by A and by Q. And we think this is positive. So that's why we assume that people are more happy consuming ads when it's better targeted. So the kind of problem will be set out in the following way. People will maximize time on the platform. They're trying to maximize engagement on Facebook, so allocate the time. We assume that this partial is positive, so that people enjoy being on the platform if they spend more time. Notice that this utility depends on a bold T. So my utility of being on platform in terms of content consumption depends on all other people's time allocation, and the idea here is to capture network effects. If there is all my friends, everyone on this call are also on Facebook, I'm getting more utility. And so this is always a cross-partial between time you spend on the platform and time I spend on the platform. So this is the first part. The second part is utility I get from seeing ads on social media. Again, this is how much ads I consume and the quality of ads. We keep this part pretty flexible. So one is People might like or dislike consuming more ads. So this is ads can be good for me or ads can be bad for me. People also might dislike a platform with higher Q, with more targeting, even though there is complementarity between ads and between targeting. And so that gets to our discussion before, gets to this idea that maybe there is still some intrinsic preference for privacy. I don't like being targeted. And this affects the time allocation through this part. Finally, there is a cost which will frame as opportunity cost of time, which is W, and the more time I spend on social media, on Facebook, the kind of I need to pay this cost of not spending time elsewhere. So this is on the user side. On the platform side, platform would choose ad loads and targeting to maximize their profits. Profits is just price advertisers are willing to pay for ads, given the ad loads and given the targeting, times how many ads people see. This is for individual eye and some our individual eyes. And there is some cost of producing content. Here we assume its cost is linear in terms of number of people and time they spend on the platform. In practice, it probably will be concave because there is economy of scale, but everything in the results wouldn't really be affected by this. So this is just to flag this, how we parameterize it for now. And platform will solve for optimal ad loads and optimal queue, given the inverse demand that it knows how people allocate their time. So it knows inverse demand. It can incorporate this in this decision process and choose optimal ad loads and optimal targeting. So this is really kind of quick overview of the model part. Two things which we get out of the model, which will kind of building up the estimates towards. One is we can derive what will be the optimal ad load in this case for the platform. And a couple of things I'll highlight in these optimal ad loads. One part is very familiar to all of us when we think about monopolistic pricing. Like a regular price and regular monopolist, ad loads will be lower if users are more elastic in terms of how much time they spend on the platform versus the ad loads. So this is a pretty standard component which we can capture in this framework. The second component, which is more social media specific, are the network effects. So ad loads will be lower if the user has stronger network effects on other users. And that's something we can test in the data by looking at people with more friends who are more active. Do they see more or less ad loads on social media? Like descriptively, we can try to characterize what's going on. And these network effects are weighted by the importance of user J versus user I in terms of their revenue share for the platform.
So, Andrey, just to clarify, you're assuming that the platform is actually setting the ad load based on your connectivity or this Bonacci centrality. You're assuming that that's happening.
Say it again, sorry.
This is the classic Bonacci centrality discrimination. You're assuming users that are more central, their ad loads are going to be systematically more different. So yeah. My question is, how do you think about realized ad load? There are many, realized ad load is super endogenous, the intensity of ad load you receive. So if you have, for instance, there's the classic endogeneity problem that I have seen in this context is if you have longer sessions and you consume a lot, what's going to happen is that frequency caps are going to kick in. It's going to become more and more difficult to fill your positions. Your ad load is going to drop. Now your ad load drops. It happens to be you are the type of person who spends a lot of time on social media. So these are the people who receive less ad load. I am not sure whether, that seems like a first order effect rather than, the platform going and trying to optimize for ad load. If anything, there's a lot of ad capacity that goes unfilled, right? It's not like that they actually, and the other question is that I don't think the platform sets ad load, platform sets ad capacity, which is the number of slots you become eligible with. In Facebook, it would be something like the rate at which, I have these positions where I run an auction on and they may get filled or they might not get filled. So I'm not sure whether the platform has direct control over ad load to discriminate on it. If anything, it has control over ad capacity.
So okay, let me start with the second one. So what you call ad capacity, which I think I understand means like which share of the feed of the screen that people will see are ads. That's what we'll call ad loads. We'll separate out experienced ad loads, which is how many ads you actually got and saw, versus how many ad loads Facebook was trying to give you. So unlike this, so I think that's kind of maybe
My question is, how do you disentangle that the field rate was not there because of your consumption patterns versus, and also advertiser demand versus discrimination by the platform? Because I think you're assuming all of it is discrimination by the platform.
We'll call all the differences across consumer as discrimination on ad loads, and which we can actually we can have a discussion later, I guess, if it's the right way to frame this idea. But to your point, like if Facebook is showing very different ad loads to me because they know a lot of stuff about me, that will be just another mechanism which right now we don't have here, but it's kind of will be part of the story. And I'll show you in descriptives in a second that people would see very different ad loads on Facebook, on Reddit, on Twitter, across different platforms.
Yeah, I agree. They see a lot of ad load that is very different. The question is this ad load discrimination by the platform, or is this their own behavior kicking in and frequency caps kicking in, or advertisers simply don't have demand for them and they cannot fill those slots, so their ad load goes down? I think these things are different.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I think the frequency cap, and that actually maybe we can ask for more institutional knowledge. That my interpretation is there is no ad cap, there is a frequency cap on Facebook, but in terms of how many ads like to show to you, this model assumes there is infinite amount of ads you can show to a person, which might be an assumption, so which is an assumption, and maybe it's like
okay. So let me just clarify this. Imagine you're receiving Cheetos ads,
just to finish the thought. Apart from this, I think a lot of other stuff you discuss will be part of what we'll call discrimination, and that's when we say discrimination, keep it in mind. So it might be not the right term for this in some way. Sorry,
just to clarify on the frequency cap, imagine you're seeing Cheetos ads. Obviously, Cheetos doesn't want many of impressions to go just to you, so they have a frequency cap on it, which means that going forward in your session, there's fewer people. Like after the frequency cap kicks in, there are fewer advertisers that would be interested in you. And as just some time passes by, naturally, either your prices go down for your slots or the field ad sort of slots go down. In both cases, it appears as if my time is less valuable, or you just served me less ads, so this is just discrimination. Both of which are simply because I have very long sessions and it's hard to fill that sort of those.
Okay, this is great. This is a good example. That's something we actually might be able to provide suggestive evidence on, because we can see how often you see the same ad again and again. Depends on number of sessions and on. So we can do it. We assume it away for now, but I think given the discrete data we have on how Facebook feeds ads, we actually can do something with this. Let's continue with this afterward. This is super helpful. This is very, very good. Any other questions on this since we kind of stopped here for a bit? I saw some questions in Q&A, but it looks like Rafa is very efficiently replying to those. So generally, command if I should continue, I should stop for more questions.
Maybe you should continue and we can circle back to this.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so where was I? This is the first part we get out of the model, which is characterizing level of ad loads. The second point we get is that if advertisers prefer higher Q, what we call match quality, or like higher targeting, and people are not, the price of the ad is not too elastic in terms of volume of ads. So we call it ad fatigue here, but it's kind of the idea is that if advertisers are willing to pay not much less for ads if ad loads increase by a lot. So this is kind of the ad fatigue, because if I see a ton of ads, maybe effectiveness of ads plummets because of attention, because of just I cannot buy all of this stuff, and price of advertisement will also kind of will respond to that. So if this under some constraints which enters here, for platform it will be optimal to always set Q equal to 1. And that's kind of one of the things we get from the model. To Yufan's point before, if we set up slightly differently, we can get slightly different results here, but we kind of what we liked about this, it gives us kind of nice predictions of what we should see given the setup. And the last thing I'll say about the model, this is not in the paper yet, but it's kind of part of what we are trying to get to later on. As a preview of the result, we'll find that Facebook prices ad loads on a very inelastic part of demand curve. And one of the explanations for that is that the model we've set up was a static model. And maybe the real more correct model is a dynamic model where Facebook set in low ad loads initially, but then eventually they'll increase ad loads to extract more revenue, ad revenue from people, which will be like a JP style switching cost model applied to platforms. But that's just to highlight, that's kind of the direction we're trying to get to with this. Okay, given the time, I'm happy to go back to the model if it comes up, but let me continue to results to show you the descriptives and the estimates. So first, descriptive part. We can use our extension to characterize how many ads people see across 3 different social media platforms which are popular on desktop: Reddit, Facebook, and Twitter. So descriptives will be for all 3 platforms. Experiment, a reminder, will be only on Facebook because it's built to manipulate Facebook feed. This plot shows you a difference in ad loads that people experience on different days. So observation is a person day across platforms. The first thing you'll notice here is that there is a lot of difference how many ads people see across sessions and across people. For example, for Facebook, average ad load is around 0.14. So it's 1 ad per 7 posts. And there is pretty wide variance from 1 ad per 5 posts to 1 ad per 100 posts or something. Similar for Twitter. For Reddit, the left tail is heavier, so there are a lot of people who see very few ads versus content. There can be different reasons for this. The first one is maybe there are differences in time in terms of how many ads are on the platform. Maybe there is campaigns which kind of go up and go down, and that's why we see this difference. So if we go from user day level to just average for user level, look at individual experienced ad loads, we can check if it's driven by difference in campaign and their timing, and we don't see that that's the case. We still see a lot of variance across all platforms. So this is not because there is different campaigns over time, it's because different people experience different ad loads. The second part you might be thinking, and this is related to a discussion with Ali earlier a bit, is maybe just it's different ad loads because people have very different usage patterns. So like maybe I'm just spending a lot of time on a particular post and load a lot of comments, particularly on Reddit. It can be something which goes on where I go in a particular direction on the newsfeed and I don't really see ads in the newsfeed as typical people would. So for this, instead of looking at experienced ad loads, we'll look at feed ad loads, which is what the platform is trying to show to consumers when they open the page. I apologize for the change in colors here. We just updated this figure this kind of last night, and I didn't have a chance to make colors aligned. So here, Facebook now is red. It has very similar pattern. Reddit also has similar pattern, or Twitter also has similar pattern. Notice for Reddit, it becomes much more similar to Twitter and Facebook, going from this. And so this tells us that for Reddit, this was one of the drivers of the result because people spend a lot of time in the comments. But once we go to the feed ad loads, it looks more similar, and there is still a lot of heterogeneity in the ad loads. So we'll refer to this heterogeneity for now as discrimination, that different people see different levels of ad loads. Just to put it in perspective, we have a mass of people who see ads every 7 posts for Facebook. And as I said, there is people who see it every 100 posts or every 4 posts. So there is something maybe about users, their behavior, maybe about organic content they have, maybe about number of friends, their reaction to ads, which is driving this difference. And the second, kind of going through the descriptors quickly, but the second thing I wanted to flag, we can also get to this importance of users by just doing decomposition of ad loads because of user fixed effects versus time fixed effects. And across all platforms, individual fixed effects drive pretty sizable share of the variance. Again, showing that there is some systematic difference. like the fact we study ad load discrimination is not out of nowhere. There is a practice which very much aligns with this idea.
Sorry, just again, are we thinking about persistent differences across people for demand from advertisers? I assume 95-year-olds in, I don't know, North Dakota are not in high demand by advertisers, right? Compared to 30-year-olds, in
This
San
is great.
Francisco.
This is great. So like that's actually
Mhm.
one of the things I didn't talk about here, because we're still trying to tailor it correctly. But one of the things we want to check is the role of this price, which is the value of this group for the advertisers. We don't have perfect measures of this, but when we run an experiment, we went to Facebook and asked for CPC quotes for demographic cells, which will represent different users. And one of the heterogeneity analysis we'll try to do later on is to compare how much ad loads are higher or lower for people who we see by price are more valuable or less valuable for advertisers. If you think so, this is, I kind of skipped it partly because I didn't have a good story. Like we didn't get far with it yet, but you're exactly right. That can be another thing we'll ideally want to capture here. Thanks.
So this other figure that you have, you get a field rate from it, right? So the portion of ads that get filled, like from this grid thing, you have a percentage of them that get filled, which I assume you haven't analyzed it, or you're going to show us.
We if by feel, I thought initially you mentioned by feel, you meant that people saw them. Facebook wanted to show them and people saw them. That we see. We don't see we don't have any idea of like how Facebook was allocating ads in the background.
So wait a second. So I'm trying to understand this figure. Is this figure slots that could have been ads, but Facebook couldn't fill them? And
No.
you're counting? It's not.
It's
Okay.
what Facebook is trying to show you. So when you open Facebook, it will load, let's say 50 posts.
Mm-hmm.
We can look at the share of ads in those 50 posts, and that's what it is.
I see.
This figure is how many ads you actually saw. So this is what we call by experience. You went.
Oh, how much did you scroll down, and
Exactly.
how further did you go? Okay, got it.
So that's the difference between these two, and that's why for Reddit, for example, we see this.
I understand now. Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Andrey, do you have estimates of how long a piece of content was on the screen for?
How long a piece of content was on the screen for? I think the answer is yes, and that will be one of the outcomes in terms of when we say time spent on ads and time spent on content. I'm trying to, so definitely for content, we're using this. For ads, I think that's what, so we'll show like how many, I think that's the input to the measure of consumption of ads. Time spent on ads will be that. Yeah. Rafa, correct me if I misremember it. Now I'm like trying to, I think that's exactly the construction of the outcome.
Yeah.
Okay. I think if you have that data, just a thing to check is how many of these ads are loaded, but then people scroll really quickly by them. So advertisers only get charged if the ad is on the screen for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so in practice, there is a high correlation between the two, but there are a number of ads which sort of load, but then, on the advertiser side, it doesn't matter. They aren't charged for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no, this is great. So we can every time I have a question like that, I mean, in theory we should be able to do it. In practice, it's always complicated, but I think we should be able to do it. So that's because it should record even small timestamps if they scroll past. No,
Great.
thanks. That's great. This is super helpful. Okay. Let me now move to the experimental results. I have 10 minutes. We should be good. So I'll go through the results quickly, and again, we'll slow down to discuss main takeaways. First, to show you experiment worked as expected. Here is 6 weeks after recruitment before the intervention and 6 weeks after the intervention for our four arms. And this is showing you the average ad load people in the group experience. For all groups, it looks pretty similar, except for height after the treatment, where ad loads drop by around 80+%. So we don't remove all of them because some of them on top, but otherwise it works as you would expect. The second, for the micro-targeting part, again, we look at the ads across different conditions. They look similar across arms, but for replace condition, ads become less similar to other arms when we turn on treatment. Less similar here is designed as difference between ads a person would see versus the ad a person with the same demographics would see typically. It's not a perfect, we could think about this measure in terms of ad characteristics. We thought this is a bit easier, but this is to show that extension does change the type of ads people see. What is the treatment? It going from targeted ads to no targeting at all. So this is kind of just showing that extension worked as we would expect. Otherwise, for the rest of the results in this section, I'll be showing you effects from this econometric specification. There'll be some outcome YIT, for example, time on the platform or time content ads are on the screen. User I time T, day T. This spec will have user fixed effect. It will have period by day by cohort fixed effects, which will be pretty restrictive. So how do we recruit? Every day we'll recruit, let's say, 15 or 20 people, and in 6 weeks, we'll randomize them across 4 groups. So we have a fixed effect for that cohort we recruited on a particular day, and we have a fixed effect of the day period in the experiment where they are. So we only compare within the cell, and this is to make sure if initially we recruit more active people compared to later, we're trying to capture this with this kind of saturated model. Finally, for this extension errors I mentioned quickly, we will include controls for that. Given the time, let me not kind of go too much in detail here, but all estimates I'll show will be robust, just dropping these observations or users who are affected by this. So those, again, this is, if you want to run a browser extension experiment, I learned that it sounds great. It's more work that, well, it's a lot of work. Finally, the main treatment will be 6 weeks after versus 6 weeks before. The long run treatment I'll show you will be 6 weeks plus additional 3 months after the intervention. So there's like 4.5 months of treatment for people we see. The first result I wanted to highlight is this is basically the same as the first stage I showed you on the picture, but it brings up an important point about what Facebook does. So our hide intervention hides 80+% of ads from the hide versus control condition. Replace doesn't do much. But if we look at number of ads Facebook is trying to show to people, which we call targeted ad loads, think about this as kind of this feed, what Facebook is trying to do. We don't see any difference in this first weeks when we run the experiment. We also don't see any difference in the 4.5 months after we start running the experiment. So our prior getting into the study was that Facebook will notice that people stop clicking on the ads and adjust something. At least based on this data, it's pretty precisely estimated null effects. We don't see any adjustment from the Facebook side. Yeah, Ali, you had a hand.
So this is the effect on ad load itself, right?
This is the effect on ad load. So this is mechanical by the experiment.
Okay, got it.
And this is
I'll wait for that. Got it.
Okay, this one. The second, let me see how much I don't have that much. That's good. So the second set of results I'll show you is the effect of the hide intervention on engagement on the platform and on the ads. So this is kind of the first part here. We have our hide effect of 80+% decrease in ad loads. How it affects usage time spent on the platform. It goes up by around 12% in this first 6 weeks. And we have pretty consistent effects for the 4.5 months. These pictures will be in terms of standard deviations. Effects are pretty small. They're also small in terms of implied elasticity. So this means that ad load volume is at an elastic part. This is consistent with the results in Niels's paper as well.
Time is total time spent on the platform, right?
Yeah, so time is total time spent on the platform. Content is pieces of content loaded. Index is a weighted average of these 2 standardized variables. Impressions is the number of ads loaded, and clicks is the number of ad clicks, and index is the weighted average of these two variables.
So content is content inclusive of organic content plus the ads, or just content?
Good question. I think it's total content, but I might be wrong.
I think it excludes ads.
If it excludes ads, are we worried that, ads mechanically crowd out content? Because if I'm going to scroll 2 meters, right? I just, let's say my demand is super inelastic. I come and I'm scrolling 2 meters of content, right? If you just put ads there and remove them, you're going to mechanically have a large effect on content.
Good point. Let me take more. So this will not have the same effect on time. So this.
Yes, that's why I asked. I think time is pretty good, so that's good.
I think it kind of aligns with Niels's point about people skipping ads very quickly, which is something that maybe like lines up with this intuition. Good point. Let me finish. I have 4 minutes, and we'll continue this once we have a discussion. This is a good point. But yeah, so this content is only organic excluding ads. So there is an effect on ad loads themselves. Impression effect is somewhat mechanical because we remove ad loads from people. Notice there is smaller effect on clicks. Why is that? Because there is still ads which are on top, which will be shown, and so effect on clicks magnitude-wise is smaller because a lot of clicks will appear on the top ads, which people still see. As a very quick overview, and then I can go back to any of this. We can look at similar effects for replacing ads. Here we see in terms of effect of removing targeting on engagement, we see that clicks go down a lot. Makes sense. Partly Facebook is trying to target ads based on partly based on clicks. We also see that impressions of ads go down. This suggests either that people spend less time on the platform overall or go less towards ads. Across specifications, we either find small negative effects, or in this case, we find null effect on the time on the platform. I think in the long run version, we start to see some effect on the platform engagement with replacement. But so the way to interpret kind of this treatment arm is that having personalized ads has small negative or no effects on engagement, or removing personalized ads has small negative or no effect on the time on the platform. So if anything, people prefer personalized ads, but they don't care that much compared to other estimates. Let me skip this part just to make, in terms of time, we can look at where people substitute towards for this. I'll show 2 quick things. One is we don't find any impact of our treatments on the willingness to accept. Again, aligned with Niels's work. These are not precise null effects. Notice standard errors are pretty massive in terms of willingness to accept. This is because we have pretty small sample size. Still good to confirm. And this goes to Avner, your question from before about differential attrition rate. So I'm not showing it. We should add a table with significance, and we should add a kind of similar figure for long time period. This is in the baseline period versus treatment period, how many people will see still active in the extension, and it looks pretty similar across arms as at least in the first 6 weeks. And I think by the end of 3 months, like extra 3 months, we get to around 50% sample staying, and it also is balanced across different arms.
Just a quick suggestion. What I meant is after you do the willingness to accept elicitation, do you see a correlation that those who are willing to accept more or less treat more or less?
I see. Okay, that's what I was. Okay, that's good. That's why I was asking you in the beginning. Is that what you meant about willingness to accept? But I didn't understand. Now I understand. So you're saying when we do an intake survey here, look at willingness to accept estimates, and then trace who are the people who leave versus who are people who stay overall across all people across all treatment arms.
And after, right? You do willingness to accept elicitation at the end, right?
At the end, and we still allow them to keep the extension. Yeah,
exactly.
We can do it twice.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Thanks a lot. I'm at time, so let me kind of give you an overview of where we're getting with counterfactual, and I'll conclude. So in counterfactuals, basically the target that we have is to think how will it affect the platform going from the current model with personalized ads and micro-targeting and no subscription to a model without ads and subscription price in terms of money, users paying some money. One step we want to do is to decompose this effects into 3 channels. One is going from micro-targeted ads to no targeted ads, see how profit of the firm is affected and consumer surplus is affected. Second, going from personalized ads to not personalized ad loads. And third, going from ads to having no ads. And so this kind of decomposes going from the current situation to a situation when social media couldn't have any ads at all. And so the final counterfactual we're trying to get to is to evaluate current policy proposals and interventions with Facebook. For example, what if Facebook was forced to offer both system with ads and system where people could subscribe with some subscription price? The interesting part here is who will subscribe and how will it affect willingness to pay of the advertisers for users. And so that's basically what's in the works for us for the based on the estimates. I'll put up concluding slide and let me conclude here. And I'm happy to stay for more questions and for a discussion. Thanks so much for the current questions.
Great. Thanks a lot for the super interesting presentation. I think there's a lot of questions and discussions. And I can start with one question. I think you may have mentioned earlier, do you have a sense of these differences across individuals? How much of that can be explained by demographics that advertisers can choose? And how much of that is kind of beyond the things that they can select? You know, beyond like age and gender, geography.
Mm-hmm. So just to make sure I understand, you're saying if we look at ad loads, how much ad loads are explained by level at which if Facebook advertisers could only target based on demographics, how much that explains versus how much is residual, right?
Yeah, because I think the long-term thing without reducing ad load is kind of interesting, and it seems to suggest that they're not using a lot of this updated, I guess, user embedding in a way that speaks to the activities. That would seem to suggest a lot of these targeting is based on, you know, beyond these behavioral things, which I'm assuming are these things that advertisers can select.
Yeah, no, this is a great share of variance unexplained. I see where you're getting with. It's kind of one of the ways to say like how much it's like Ali's story about differential prices that you are willingness to pay versus something else. It's not a perfect kind of decomposition because of course it's hard for us to measure everything Facebook can do, but at least it gives some suggestive proportions. No, thanks. This is good. One thing I haven't shown you, which we are working on now, is trying to just predict what predicts ad loads across people. It's in the works. But yeah, don't have it yet.